This is part two of video on steampunk is real, and I just want to give a few more examples of steampunk. And Cabinets of Curiosities is a perfect example of something that just, it really feels steampunk. And what I mean by that is I just mean, so if you haven't already, you can go watch my previous video on this. To me, the whole concept of steampunk is just, it's like magnifying the fact that in the Victorian era there was too much technology, too much stuff. Because when I think of steampunk, I think like excess. There so much excess when it comes to steampunk. It's like technology's there where it doesn't even need to be in steampunk, and it's just for show a lot of times. And it seems above and outside the the makings of the people who were wearing it. That's kind of a thing about steampunk. It's like, wow, you look old-timey, but you're covered in this strange futuristic looking stuff that who knows if it even does anything. So, Cabinets of Curiosities, very similar, because people just had so much stuff. You weren't going to let your neighbor go out and find all the cool trinkets. You wanted more. You wanted to go find the coolest stuff. People were probably just going through the old buildings, going in the basements and trying to find anything that was salvageable or that they could refurbish. And so a few things I find very interesting about the Cabinets of Curiosity. One thing that's very interesting is that the term cabinet originally described a room rather than a piece of furniture. So what that tells me is, in the beginning, people had entire rooms worth of curious things to show off. And then, of course, later there's more people and less stuff to go around, and cabinet ends up being just a piece of furniture full of interesting trinkets. So that I found very interesting. Um, another thing that I find very interesting is that it appears that at least what they tell us about the history of these cabinets of curiosities seems to predate museums, and we'll get into that in a second. Which that doesn't make any sense to me. Why wouldn't there already be well-established museums at this point? Why does it seem like it's a free-for-all? Cabinets of Curiosities just seems like every random person could fill their house, could have a room in their house full of random stuff. Why weren't big museums already established at this point? I mean, they'll tell us that kingdoms and kings and queens had been going on for a long time at this point. Why didn't the kings and queens already have all the curious stuff? Why were random people full of strange artifacts? So that's another thing to me. Doesn't make any sense that museums would come out of cabinets of curiosity at such a time. It's just like, shouldn't they already have well-established museums at this time? I don't understand. Okay, so another thing that's very interesting to me is that it's like anybody could have a cabinet of curiosity. In addition to the most famous and best documented cabinets of rulers and aristocrats, I mean, they're the ones who inherited the most fancy castles, so they had basements full of stuff. Members of the merchant class and early practitioners of science in Europe formed collections that were precursors to museums. So this reminds me of when I was talking about in my last video on this topic about how some dude would walk up to the university and be like, yeah, I'm the chemistry professor, and then go in the basement. So that the early practitioners of science, the people who started the reset claiming themselves to be the biggest science guys, had a lot of stuff, to show off. And yeah, just in my opinion, there's no way that, like, where do they get all this stuff? Where's it coming from? And I'm offering a potential solution to that. There was just a reset, and the cities were totally empty, and the populations were tiny, and it was a free-for-all. That was the real Wild West. I mean, you know why they call it the Wild West? Because they knew. And this is actually one of the biggest reasons why, like, the appeal of America is people could come over here and have land. And the whole Wild West thing, they knew that it was a Wild West that San Francisco had giant buildings sitting there waiting to be discovered and looted. And there were old buildings all over the West Coast that people were still able to go out and then say, "Oh, I built that." So that's what the Wild West. This was like the Wild West, but in Europe. The Victorian era was like the Wild West, but set in European giant cities that are really empty and dark. Uh, got the gnarly whale. So yeah, I think that this stuff, I don't think that they made it. I think that they were just showing off their most impressive antiques. I don't think that the wretched people living in filth in what they tell us the Victorian era, I don't think that horse and buggy people were doing this sort of thing. And uh yeah, I mean this goes into my last video, the artistic, there's just too much, too high quality. And just because you can potentially make these things with low tech, I don't buy the argument that low tech horse and buggy people were creating it. So let me just say that one more time. Because what it is we see these people that are clearly living in wretchedness and in low tech, but then they have so much lavish stuff. But then people in their mind, they'll be like, oh, but it's like old tech. It's stuff that they could really, could anybody do this? Could anybody make this? Or was this a product of a society that's beyond what we have today? And I'm not saying beyond the computer stuff. I'm just saying that the society was so advanced that it was full of artisans and just what do we get today? Cheap China crap. So it was a different time. It doesn't matter if they had computers or not. Technology, what we think of as technology is just whatever those in control allow the everyday person to have access to. That's what technology is. It's totally gatekept. Go to any brainiac out there that has 5 degrees and ask him to build a toaster out of raw materials. Go out in the desert and build me a toaster. See how well they do in building something as simple as a toaster. There's some notable collections started this way, and in my opinion, this doesn't make sense. Why don't they already have well-established museums at this point? And to me, it's like it was the Wild West, and there were just anybody could go and and find interesting things and fill a room with it. And that's the precursor to museums, because history was just restarting at that point. And you'll get stuff like this, and then they'll say, "Oh, it was built in the style in the old style." And then they give stuff like this. I've gotten comments like this, "Oh, but they have," because when you go and look for construction photos, they'll tell you that these things were built in eras where photography existed. But this is all you get. You just get one little drawing like this. This isn't proof of anything. This isn't proof of construction. So that's about as much proof. Interesting name, too, over there. Charles Cockerell. Ionic Order of Greek Architecture. Right. They really don't have old photos of it, even though photography existed. This is what these things always look like. They're always refurbishing these buildings, even today. And the facade, the whole word facade is the practice of they'd come in and they'll build a new front to this. They might put some pretty stuff on the outside. Do you know the old photos and depictions of old Europe? Have you guys noticed how silly it looks sometimes where they have these magnificent masonry buildings and then they have these like tacky wooden placards all over the place that are like describing the pub? And it's such a disconnect. How do you build this magnificently ornate masonry building, and then you have to cover it with all this wooden tacky signage? Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so getting through this, now I want to tell a story about steampunk. So probably the worst class I ever took in university, but it's one of those that had silver lining, I guess. It was a reason I took that class. Because the entire point of the class was just the teacher smelling their own farts and talking about climate change and stuff. But anyways, the most interesting part of this class was we got to take a field trip one day to the underground. And we went under the university to the steam room. And the teacher was talking about how, yeah, nobody, you wouldn't even know what's underneath your feet. And we have the boiler rooms here, and this gives the power to the whole university and heating. And it was amazing at the time and strange. Like, wow, okay, why are we down? I didn't know that this was here, and it was right under your feet. So yeah, no, I did not go to Harvard. I'm just picking this to show you an example. Universities have steam power. Steampunk, steam. There were all sorts of, this is a big topic that I haven't even looked at pictures, because see, when this topic just opens up so many avenues for research that can just go on for hours and hours and hours. So a really cool topic is cast iron machinery and cast iron, like, steam machinery. And just this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, the art, where people are like, oh, well, it's simple, it's metalwork, it's not a computer, so therefore it has to be simple. Just because something is made out of steam technology doesn't mean that it's less advanced than a computer. A big thing that whatever empire created all of these magnificent buildings, they were they were obsessed with longevity, with building things to last. And you can see that today's society is the opposite of that. So you can't even compare the two, because this society was obsessed with making things that would last for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands. They built things like the Parisian underground sewer system. They don't build it like that today. Okay, so, and they built these things to run off of steam, which is very interesting. So it does appear like Tartaria or whatever. I've seen, this is not my strong area of research or anything, but it does seem like Tartaria was doing crazy things with atmospheric electricity and possibly also pneumatics, steam, air-powered stuff. It makes me think of, the jet fuel hoax, how modern turbines, they really use air as a fuel. Anyways, steam, any major university is probably run on steam, and the steam network has probably always been there, older than the modern university buildings themselves, and a remnant of a times past where there was an advanced society that used steam technology. Harvard's Blackstone, even that name sounds so evil. Harvard's Blackstone steam plant supplies the university's central distribution. The plant's 4 boilers operate on natural gas, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Here's the boiler room scary sign. Danger! Asbestos, cancer, and lung disease hazard. Anyone who's worked in a really old university, they know about the asbestos thing. Yep, asbestos is a big problem. I think it's funny that I have a story about in academia. They have so many of these old world buildings, and I remember at the time it seemed weird, but the professors were very against retrofitting. You know how they're always going into these old buildings and like, oh, earthquake awareness, we want to retrofit the building. I just thought it was interesting that the professors where I worked, they were all heavily against it. They were like, we don't care, don't retrofit it, leave the building the way that it is. And now that I know what I know, you would think people in academia would be like, oh, of course, the scientific smart thing to do is retrofit the building. Why did they all say don't retrofit it? Okay. Why an underground story, why Harvard heating runs hot and cold. I picked this article because read the very beginning. Over blah blah blah. But very few students actually know how Harvard buildings are heated, or in very rare cases, cooled. Yeah, you can cool with steam in weird way. The advanced technology to run everything off of steam. Very smart, clean technology too. See, that's the thing where, what about steam power is low tech to you? Steam seems like a brilliant way to run things. It's water and clean. Pneumatic, this whole topic, steam power, steampunk, pneumatic, is a big meme in the novel Brave New World. I'll just leave it there. Brave New World also mentions free martins. Steam is high tech. Yeah, so I think I sort of started mentioning it earlier in this video, but I got sidetracked. I've researched it before, and I don't know where all the photos went. I'll have to look at it again. Steam generators and just like heavy machinery made out of cast iron that are steam powered. There used to be so much of that stuff, and it eventually just breaks down and people get rid of it. And that is really high tech. Something I was going to mention seems totally random, but sometimes on YouTube I'll watch these candy making videos, and it always amazes me when they bust out these really old cast iron candy making machines that it looks like, dang, that thing's been around for 200 years and it's still working. There's nothing low tech about that. The people in times past were obsessed with longevity and in making things that would last. Okay, I guess this is just another random thing. This is like old conspiracy. I remember first getting into population hoax and people mentioning the whole, well, you know how you don't ever meet anybody named John Smith the Eighth these years. Nobody's John Smith the Eighth. And the farthest number you go back today should show you how recent the most recent reset is. And so what is it? Like, I've never even heard of, we have people that are like the third and the fourth, maybe the fifth right now, maybe. So that's how many generations it goes back to the last reset, I believe. Anyway, so that's just a quick one-off topic. Maybe you've never heard of that theory before. Hey, how come we don't have people the 8th anymore? We don't have somebody the 12th. If in way in times past there was Henry the 8th, why don't we have Henry the 16th by now? And it's because there was a reset. Oh, and another pneumatic thing. Those old organs, the giant pipe organs, steampunk, the pipe organs are air powered. They run on air. So, I mean, I'm not a engineering expert or anything, but I just also was reminded of this, the pneumatics behind the giant cathedral organs. All right, I hope you enjoyed this secondary video on steampunk. God bless everyone.